According to the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, global trade is predicted to drop by 27% in the second quarter of 2020. On this particular episode of Doing Business in Rwanda, we take a look at how trade here in the country has been affected, as well as the measures that have been put in place for the cross-border truck drivers. I will be your host, Narengwa Fiona Muthoni. According to Rwanda's Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, the government is currently working on a $100 million COVID-19 relief fund to facilitate the recovery of the economy.
You have seen that IMF keeps revising downwards the world economic outlook because the situation is really changing very fast. So whatever projection any country, any organization can do is only temporary, subject to change, depending on the speed, the extent, and the duration of the pandemic. Initially, we had about 8%. Then we agreed with IMF on 5.1, after 3.5. So we are still working for IMF, but the growth will be much lower than the 3.5 that we had in the last month. We have adopted an economic recovery plan that includes the Economic Recovery Fund. The objective is to support the most affected businesses to access affordable working capital to resume the activities. The government is putting in the fund an equivalent of $100 million. This is secured, but we continue to mobilize more resources. We are planning to get about $200 million. But $100 million is already enough, according to our calculation, for initial phase to provide that package of facilities to businesses. The fund also will support all sizes of businesses, large, medium, small, and micro enterprises. The only condition is to demonstrate that those businesses were viable before COVID-19 and they have been affected by the pandemic, and the measurement will be the loss in their turnover. It must be at least 50%.
Following the outbreak, there was a significant disruption in the global value chains, and liquidity levels of most small firms has been affected, hence making it difficult to start over without access to capital. Stephen Tumusime, a sales consultant, shared with us that despite this, some businesses are making a profit.
It's tough, especially if you're importing. But for us who are manufacturing from Rwanda, it's not that much tough. I'll give you an example of companies like our very own Vinit. Vinit is a biscuit manufacturer. Last year, quarter one was not as good. Now this year, when we were affected with COVID, we doubled the numbers. I can show you the reports. It's crazy. While people are crying, the numbers have grown. People have largely continued consuming locally. So you know that there's not been so much money going out of the country. People have the money locally. And so what they do, they resort to consuming local product. And I think largely that is why bottom of the pyramid products have been consumed at large. I've told you sweets for babies, biscuits, wheat flour, and all these other stuffs have been consumed largely because people have the money to spend locally. Most businesses have not taken money out of the country. Why? Of course, because it's hard. Remittances are hard. Trucks easily accessing borders in and out is very hard. So those that were trading on imports are now resorting to substitute it directly with local products. We can access our raw materials locally, some of them, if not most of them. And then, of course, we can do the product here because we have the factory here. So you find that the raw materials are being made here and the product itself is being made here. Now, the part that government has done, I will tell you, is to enable local production. And I think government is looking, I'm not very certain, but I think government now are awake to the fact that if we empower local, we will generally empower our economy.
So we are an importing economy. It's very hard to import, especially the import from China. I will say also it has gone even on the export sides, because the same country we export to have issues. You know, the majority of the countries were closed until very recent, where some countries started to release or to easy the access in those countries. So exports were affected as well. Statistics, Rwanda imports, I would say they import from the region, you know, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, it go up to 48% of the import of the economy, but also on the export, it's almost the same. So half of the export going to the international markets goes to the countries. But what is most strategic, maybe is not captured in the statistic, is the East African community allow Rwanda to access the international markets. Here we are talking about the Central Corridor and the Northern Corridor. So even if we wouldn't be exporting to Tanzania, but we are using the Central Corridor to access the international market, anything Rwanda would be exporting to China, to US, to wherever Rwanda will be using the ports, being Dar es Salaam, being Mombasa port. Those are critical ties between Rwanda and the East African countries, which are like the key of the Rwandan economy to boost. So it's very important that the relationship between Rwanda and the East African countries are very good, so that they can easy and facilitate the access to the international market in the export, but also on the side of imports.
The COVID-19 pandemic has seen countries across the region implement new trade regulations restricting the movement of some goods and services to curb the spread of the virus. We are here in Eastern Province, Kirehe district at Rusumo border. It's actually the border between Tanzania and Rwanda, and we are going to see the impact of these restrictions on trade. The place is abuzz with activity as truck after truck is sprayed and disinfected by officers from the Rwanda Biomedical Center, who are covered from head to toe in protective gear. The Rwandan government has established the station as part of the measures to curb the spread of COVID-19 by minimizing cross-border movement of truck drivers. On the 24th of April, Rwanda registered 22 new cases, the biggest number since the country confirmed its first COVID-19 case on the 14th of March. The Ministry of Health attributed the increased number of cases to cross-border truck drivers and their assistants. At the Rusumo border, that is Rwanda's border with Tanzania, truck drivers are first tested for the virus before proceeding to the Kianzi Logistics platform to clear their goods. Dr. Jose Nyamusore, who is in charge of epidemic surveillance and response at the Rwanda Biomedical Center, explains the measures taken to ensure the virus chain of transmission is cut.
Number one, when they are at the entrance point, we normally do what we have been implemented for years. It is washing hands with soap and clean water. Number two, we take the temperature there. And that is the entry point. And when they are here, what we do, number one again, is vehicles are normally categorized. There is what you call the swap to driver vehicles. It means that the vehicle is here and they will be taken by another driver. So our role is to ensure that that vehicle is decontaminated. So the next driver is not at risk. And someone will open it will not be also at risk. And we have what we call the offloading. And the transshipment vehicles. Transshipment means the goods in the vehicle will be loaded in another vehicle immediately. And we have those who will be offloaded here, of course, because this is a warehouse. So our role here is to make sure we cut the chain of transmission.
According to Rosine Uwamaria, the Rwanda Revenue Authority Commissioner for Customs Services, the newly established logistics station is not only a measure to curb the spread of COVID-19, but also a means to facilitate trade.
The objective of this facility is also part of the effort to prevent the spread of coronavirus, but at the same time facilitate trade and movement of cargo. So the thinking behind this facility is to make sure that traders and other people get the services, all the services they could get in Kigali that are available here, so that especially truck drivers, they don't have to drive a long distance to be able to transport goods to the final destination in different areas in Kigali.
At the Kianzi site, the truck drivers have the option of offloading their goods and storing them at the warehouse facilities, which can take up to 100 containers. The site also has accommodation facilities for the drivers. Tanzanian truck drivers can be seen milling around their trucks, most of which are labeled Kianzi Driver Swap, which means that they have been disinfected and are ready for the long journey to Kigali with a Rwandan driver behind the wheel. And while they appreciate the measures to curb the spread of the virus, the Tanzanian truck drivers are uncomfortable with the arrangement that involves handing over the trucks and the goods to total strangers.
The new restrictive measures by the Rwandan government are good and they ensure our safety. But our concerns is trucks that ferry sensitive goods like fuel. It will be very difficult and risky for us to hand over the trucks to drivers that we don't know. What will happen if the fuel comes up short? Who will take the blame? So I think the Tanzanian truck drivers should be escorted to Kigali, deliver the goods, and be escorted back, as was the practice before.
Meanwhile, traders are calling on governments in the region to consider harmonizing the restrictive measures so as to achieve maximum results. This is what Fred Secor, the chairman of the Federation for East Africa Freight Forwarders Association, had to say.
We as a business people, we are requesting harmonization with East African. What is the measures, what is the guidelines which East Africa now are going to move with? We are waiting to see, maybe by next week, our governments will speak with other governments, then the EAC should come up with one of the solution and the guidelines to be giving everyone, either drivers, cargo owner, logistics, everyone, clearing agents, freight forwarder, warehousing operators. We must have a guidelines in this situation to be known how are we moving.
Cross-border trade is estimated to account for the livelihood of about 60% of the East African community residents. Hence, a coordinated approach both for combating COVID-19 and the recovery of the economies is needed.
Intra-regional trade is the way to go. As you know, there have been a lot of efforts to promote the regional and the continental integration. The most recent agreement was on the continental free trade area, but it will take time to make it fully operational. But within the East African community, we have free trade. This is really our basic market. Then we also have to expand the market and look for export opportunities beyond the region.
That brings us to the end of today's edition of Doing Business in Rwanda. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, suggestions and feedback, feel free to write to us on Twitter at CNBC Africa, or you can tag me directly at Fimuthoni. It's bye for now.